we are going to focus on next part of the content, which is for storage for Google Cloud Computing purposes. So as you might know, we are still focused on the fundamentals of Google Cloud Platform. But just because it is fundamental doesn't mean it is not important. Okay, so let me just show you an example about why cloud computing or this storage products are important here. So if you had searched in many movies like Chamber of Secrets movies in part number 2, they talk about this Library of Alexandria. So in this Library of Alexandria, it was supposed to be one of the best libraries ever, in which they had accumulated around at least to 40,000 to 4 million books at its peak time. It was like a repository of almost all the knowledge which was known at that time, of course, being an old library. Now, if you take a look right now, if you take a look at your WhatsApp chat history, okay, including all your groups you are part of, everything you might talk of. So that amount of data which we have right now is so much that it might be bigger than Library of Alexandria of that time. This is to simply showcase how far we have come as a species and how much data is increasing farther we are going. Okay, so if you want to show, if you want to think, okay, human brain is so evolved and something, but we don't really know what is happening in human brain, to be honest. Okay, there is this one of my favorite project is Human Connectosome project. Okay, this image is a very high definition rendering of a human brain. Okay, human brain in which when we say someone has high IQ, it means they have more number of neurons in their brain. It has already been proven that someone with high IQ is not necessarily more intelligent. If someone is hardworking, they can kind of like overcome the less IQ they have been given with, because they can build more connections in their brain. This Human Connectosome project, its aim is do complete mapping of human brains connection, everything. So it's like the data they have, it's predicted that it will be more than it will be close to half a petabyte or something. So imagine a hard drive, backup hard drive which we take, which is 4 GB versus, am I audible? Okay, now audio is coming. Was it fine? Is it fine now? Can security
Yes,
please
yes,
let me know on the
yes,
chat?
yes, you're audible.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you see, it's this human connections wherein you do complete 3D, a very high definition rendering of human connections, which is supposed to be more around half a petabyte. A backup archive might be, in my local hard disk, it is 4 TB. 100 times is the more size of just connections in human brain. You can imagine how big the data is. So when you think of the volume of the data we have, we actually need things to store that data. So, and the biggest place for data is, of course, Google search engine. So if I simply search, let's say hello world. Okay, I've simply searched hello world and we have Lady Attenborough hello world song something, but the fun part is top of the search screen. Okay, if you see in the hello world, we have around 369, around 2.2 million search results have been returned. 2.2 million search results, and that too in less than half a second. You can imagine how fast a system needs to be: one, to store the data; two, to process the data; three, to give the results back into such a small amount of time. So if you simply imagine what is happening in the background, it is insane what is happening. In terms of technology, we are reaching towards the capacity of human brain, which is for storage or processing or whatever it might be. And when I look at the technology this way, I just find it just amazing. Whatever science fiction novels, science fiction movies, superhero comics like Iron Man, the Jarvis character which is shown in the Iron Man movies, it's all possible now because the processing power of offered to us by cloud computing is allowing us to reach closer to that capacity. So for that purpose, one of the components is storage products, and this is what we are going to see today. Okay, so today's module begins with storage. It is nothing but a place to store all the data we might have. Okay, either it could be in database, or it could be text, it could be images or video, or it could be anything. And that place, what we want to do is like that will act as a foundation for applications which we are going to develop on cloud. We can use this storage as a foundation to build the applications here. So my application could be simple YouTube. Okay, the what has happened is really fun. If I take a look at many of the companies which were quite good before cloud computing happened, we can actually implement the same solution at a very fractional cost, because cloud has made things very easy. So this superpower is what is available to us. It's like having Superman's superpower, but we are choosing to walk. By not using power and capabilities offered to us by cloud, it's like having superpowers but never using them, never learning them. And that's why we have sessions like this, where we are actually becoming aware of our superpowers, and this is our origin story. Okay, so origin story of learning to use the superpower provided to us by cloud. Okay, so let's begin. What are the storage products in cloud, and how do we go about using them? That's the kind of like session we will have now. Okay, so you see here we just have around 5 products or something. So we have cloud storage, which is nothing but storage. Let's just call it as a hard disk, whatever data I'm saving locally. Let's say I have lots of movies and books and something which I have combined from different places. Let's just say that. And if I'm kind of like storing them, where would I be storing them? One of the places solutions I could be using is simple cloud storage. Then we have cloud SQL. So there is nobody alive, okay, who has not heard of RDBMS. Relational databases, they are like bread and butter, and it's the most widely known, widely used technology. So how do we kind of like simply use that on Google Cloud? That also we'll see today. Then we have a completely evolution in the SQL. So when we started with SQL. Then SQL was limited by the volume of the data. So it was limited by volume and it was limited by throughput. So how many people can concurrently query the SQL database and still get the response without much time? That's the throughput. So we have SQL, but SQL had this limited volume of data and limited throughput it could support. So then came the evolution of the data, which was like NoSQL. Okay, NoSQL was nothing but distributed computation used for databases. So there was one university which they did this first experiment, and their distributed computing cluster they had created, it was named as Beowulf. And Beowulf is a mythological person, kind of like Hercules and stuff, who killed the dragon, got superpowers and blah blah blah. There was a very bad movie on this as well, but that was Beowulf was the first distributed computing cluster, which has been become as a very foundational technology now. So we have SQL, then we have NoSQL, and then the third evolution here is new SQL. So the limitation of NoSQL was there was no limitation on data. Okay, kind of like Fight Club. Like the first rule is, do not talk about Fight Club. Second rule, do not talk about Fight Club. Similarly, it's like in NoSQL, it's like there is no limitation, but the problem is that limitation leads to another problem, which is the query language is difficult. SQL query language is easy, but NoSQL querying is not as easy as SQL. So new SQL tried to combine the best of both worlds. So in the new SQL, we have Cloud Spanner. In SQL, we have Cloud SQL. In NoSQL, we have Bigtable. So this is the kind of like evolution of products mapped onto Google Cloud products. And then we have another product, which is Cloud Data Store. Data Store is a super cool product. So for example, let's just say, let's say we are playing video games. Okay, so now video game could be PUBG, or video game could be Call of Duty. Okay, so I'm playing Call of Duty quite a lot nowadays, and it's fun game. Okay, we can in the game it's like action, shooting, blah blah blah. But the fun part is if we open, let's say, a player's playing history, that history has to go somewhere. Okay, and now if we look at how many people are playing the game simultaneously, okay, maybe I'm not sure. Okay, but let's say out of 100 billion, no, population is around 10 billion. Out of 10 billion, I don't know, let's say 100 million people are playing the video game. They are making transactions at the same time, and their transactions have videos and stuff like this. So whenever we have data volume which is like this high, and we want my database to scale with this high volume automatically, in that scenario, one of the suitable products is to use data store. So whenever I'm going to bank, I am not bothered about how much it scales as long as transactions are accurate. You know, in the bank, even if it scales for everybody transacting at the same time, but if I remove 100 rupees and in my account 200 rupees are deducted, $200 are deducted, that's not a bank's transaction which is good. So in RDBMS, the main important thing to focus on is transaction, whereas in data store it is the scale. It's still as transactional as Cloud SQL, but it's still cool. Okay, so these are the kind of like overviews of storage products which you are going to see today, and then we are going to take a look at application development on Google Cloud. And like I said before, these are nothing but foundations of what we are going to do going forward. Okay, so the list of products, we have cloud storage, Bigtable, Cloud SQL, and data store, and then finally the comparison. So assuming we are in the developer mindset, and what are the tools which of the trade which I need to master is that our problem statement. Okay, so first is cloud storage. So cloud storage is kind of like a very interesting place. Okay, let me go to Cloud Console here. Let me go to scroll down, and you see, after I have logged into Google Cloud Console, on the left hand side, when I open the navigation and I scroll down to the section of storage, I have list of storage products which are available. Okay, Bigtable, data store, Firestore, file store, storage, SQL spanner, memory store. These many data storage databases we have. Out of this, we are selecting storage. Okay, this storage is different from regular hard drive which we are used to. Okay, let's just understand, this storage is different from regular hard drive. Okay, let me say create a bucket. The unit of storage here is called as bucket. I am going to take a random name, copy paste it here, and let's just hope this works, and create. Then this is asking me, where do I store the data? So now here the question is, do I store it in a region, or two regions, or multiple regions? So for example, here let's just say I store videos of maybe IPL videos or something here. Okay, and in those videos, what I want to do is, like, I want my videos to be accessible fastest in India, or maybe I want them to be fastest in the whole continent, which is APAC. Based on how much speed do I want, I have to choose appropriately. So I could maybe select region, and in the region, let me select in South Asia, okay, Mumbai. So it's going to be fastest in Mumbai. If I select multi-region, I can scroll down. So it could be, here in the Asia, it is going to have similar latency. Everywhere in Asia, it is going to be faster than other places. Here in region, if I select Mumbai, it is going to fastest be in Maharashtra. Okay, so let's just choose Mumbai data center. Okay, go ahead. Now it is asking me what kind of storage class. Let's just select default one. Let's not worry about anything. It's asking me advanced settings like encryption, retention policy, some label I might want to add to this bucket, but let's not worry about it. Okay, on the right hand side we can see what's the price. The price of the storage is 0.0323 per GB per month. Pretty cheap this is. Okay, let us create this, and this creates bucket immediately. Notice we did not specify how many hard disks are needed for this. No, none of that is needed. Once we create a bucket, we can upload as much data as we can. Okay, the only one limitation we have here is this: one file can't be bigger than 5 TB. Other than that, there is no limitation on cloud storage files. Okay, so that's one kind of like storage, which is, it is extremely high performance storage. It is really fast, and it scales automatically. Okay, it scales really fast, and the data encryption is kind of like a very common thing. We have to have data encryption for the security purposes. Okay, so cloud storage is one of the products. It is nothing but a storage products which is kind of like very widely used, it's kind of like going to be a first place of any kind of data I might have. Okay, so the first place of its station, its journey, when it's coming on Google Cloud, it's going to be cloud storage. Okay, so that's what we have. And then these are, some things like this. We have to have the bucket name has to be unique. Okay, so this thing is easy to remember, so I'm going to cross it out. Then there are two things which are important here. So one is storage class and two is location. Okay, so we have one as a storage class and two is a location. And this is what I was talking about in terms of regional. Okay, when I say my data is stored in Mumbai data center, I choose where it is accessible the fastest. Okay, so sorry, that was the location part. That was the location. So in the storage class was something else. Storage class was nothing but how frequently is data accessed. For example, let's say I have a file. I do updates to that file. So the historical updates to that file are version number 1, version number 2, version number 3, version number 4. Now the file will be accessed, most likely only the latest version will be accessed. The historical versions are very rarely accessed, right? So because of that, if I actually don't want to spend as much money on storing the historical files, I could use different storage classes. So let me just say Google Cloud pricing calculator. Okay, so I'm opening pricing calculator here. In the pricing calculator, I'm choosing cloud storage. So out of the products, okay, cloud storage I've chosen. So I'm choosing to save, let's say, 1 petabyte of data. Okay, now that is into regular standard storage. I'm choosing to store 1 again petabyte of data into nearline. I'm choosing to store 1 petabyte of data into cold line. I'm choosing to store 1 petabyte of data in archive. So there are 4 kinds of different storages, right? So let's just add them to estimate. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so if I'm storing 1 petabyte of data, the pricing is $20,000. Okay, $20,000 to save 1 petabyte of data. And remember, it was half a petabyte almost memory for Human Connectosome project. CERN Hadron Collider's experimentation data, it was more than 50 petabytes. So imagine how big data is present nowadays. So we do need such storage tools. Okay, so when we go to nearline, this nearline is a bit cheaper. It is almost half the price. So $10,000 for a petabyte. If you go to cold line, it is $5,000, almost $4,000 for a petabyte. If you go to archival, it is just $1,000. So every layer we go, almost the price becomes half. Okay, so this is what we get when we are having in terms of storage class. Okay, a storage class which is standard, it's more expensive for storage, but we can do more IO. If something is very infrequently accessed, then we have 3-4 different types. If something is accessed only once a year, we could put it into archive. It becomes very cheap then. So that's the kind of like feature. So cloud storage has many subtle features. They are very cool. Okay, so let's just mark them. Oops, my slides have moved to somewhere else. Okay, so let's just mark them. Excuse me. So let's just mark them as done, and we can move on. So then this is the security thing, and there are other features like object versioning and object lifecycle management. We won't talk about that because that goes more into the advanced features of cloud storage bucket. So for now, let's just focus on what we have, which is like fundamentals foundation. Okay, going forward. So you see, this is what I said. The storage become cheaper as and when we go across the storage which are available. So multi-region is more expensive, then regional is less expensive. But the least expensive is archival. But it has more price for retrieval. So this is how the kind of like graph is. If you want, you could use GCP pricing calculator to do the experiment yourself and see how frequently is it used, not used, what is the price of storage, what is price of access, blah, blah, blah. If you want, I could kind of like create a share links about it. There is a link which is gonna be shared with everybody. So that link is going to be, just a second. That link is this is.gd. Let me just find that link. Okay, it's been shared already. Let me just, I'll have to open it here. This is the link. The link is like is.gd izagux. Okay, if you open that link, what you will be redirected to is, you will be redirected to a document in which I have put in some information like, oh, general Google Cloud resources. If you want to do stuff by yourself, how do you start? If you want to go about certification, how different tracks are there, importance of certifications, then how many trainings are there. If you are going into infrastructure track, what kind of path you could take. If you are taking data engineering path, what kind of track you could take, where are the courses, and blah blah blah. So by following this, you are ensuring that you are learning Google Cloud pretty well, and by getting certified, you are ensuring that everybody knows that you have knowledge. So that's the kind of like document where you can find extra resources. Maybe I will put some info there. Okay, and I've talked about this before. I said once we kind of like get for Google Cloud Storage, it's nothing but step 1 of data in Google Cloud journey. So from here, it can go to some places else. So there are different 3 services which we can use to get the data in Google Cloud. But let's not go into depth, because as you already know, we are covering the 30,000 view of the products. Okay, so let's go to Bigtable now. Okay, so cloud storage was nothing but a simple file system. Of course, it was a distributed file system, but it was a file system. It was not a database. Okay, we have Bigtable. Okay, Bigtable is not like that. Bigtable is not a file system. Bigtable is a database. It is a NoSQL database. Okay, it is a NoSQL database. So kind of like in a journey of SQL to NoSQL to new SQL, it's the NoSQL database. Okay, now it is kind of like very compatible with HBase API. So we had HBase database you might have used if you're already working in big data, then you would know this. It's a HBase compatible API. Okay, now why should we use it and blah blah blah. Now I mean, this feature is not really relevant. I mean, no one will use it just for replicated. Encryption thing is like just side feature. It's like we have to know that everything is going to be encrypted, everything is going to have access control list, everything is going to have secure application. The thing is, Bigtable is really fast, very low latency for analytics. Okay, it's so big that it's one of the major applications used. Okay, major applications used in Gmail. Okay, so imagine Gmail kind of like one of the most frequently used email system, and number of emails, if you think are not that good, look again. I'll show you. This is website called as Internet Live Stats. Okay, on this website it tells you general approximate stats. Okay, so what happens in a second? It is telling us. If I click on emails, right now it will tell us approximately in a second around 2 million emails are sent. Okay, and out of the 2 million emails, around 67% email are spam. Imagine how bad our life would be if we had to remove this 67% emails ourselves. Luckily, we don't have to do that. Luckily, Google Cloud's Bigtable and the spam no spam thing which has been created inside Google Cloud is very good. Okay, so because of that, we don't have to worry about the spamming thing. But amazing, right? The foundation of Gmail in the background, the storage and analytics foundation is Bigtable. It's fast. It's really fast. Okay, so that's why we use it. My slides have. Okay, so that's why we use it. Now going forward, that was just a quick overview of Bigtable. Okay, as you know, we are not going into implementation. If you want to go detail, okay, what can you do? I've given the path into that Evernote document. Okay, going forward, let's just talk about SQL. So SQL is everywhere, whether it is starting from engineering where we have RDBMS courses, or when we begin job, or even until when we retire. Reports and SQL querying is like a day-to-day job or day-to-day life of almost everyone, even remotely related to field of IT. Okay, and for SQL we have these two very popular common databases, which is MySQL and PostgreSQL. Okay, here when we use them on Google Cloud, what is going to happen is it's going to have these features. So that's the point of cloud computing. If I don't want to worry about automatic reflection, or I don't want to worry about managed backups, or I don't want to worry about vertical scaling or horizontal scaling or security, I don't have to worry about any of that. I simply start using the SQL database on cloud and I'm done. Okay, so cloud makes my job easier, and it directly allows me to focus on the main work, which is coding. Okay, so Cloud SQL is kind of like all products inside Google Cloud can connect very easily to all products inside Google Cloud. Okay, so SQL can easily connect to cloud storage, or cloud storage can easily kind of like be read into Cloud SQL. SQL can connect to different products like App Engine, Compute Engine, blah 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 blah. So if I'm using some JDBC drivers or something, maybe I could write a program to read the data from an external database, but just the IP. But it will be much better if that is, instead of external, that database is internal on Google Cloud with help of Cloud SQL. Now, span. Okay, so I said this was the journey, evolution. I love evolution because the history is a very good indicator of chaos. Okay, there are so many random factors, but all this randomness, all these mistakes inevitably lead to growth. This is one of the favorite dialogues in Westworld TV series. It's like the mistake. Okay, we as a humanity or every other animal is part of lots of mistakes, and that mistake leads to evolution. Okay, and it's the evolution which leads to growth. So Cloud Spanner is that final stage of that evolution in kind of like SQL related stuff, which started with SQL, then went to NoSQL, and then it went to new SQL. So the limitation of SQL was, okay, how much data it can store and how much throughput it can have, how many users can concurrently query. Now Cloud Spanner tries to bypass that limitation. So Cloud Spanner is a horizontally scalable. What do I mean by this? So I could create a Cloud Spanner with one node. One node is nothing but one computational unit which is allocated to Cloud Spanner here. Or I could do it by using 2 nodes. Or I could do the same thing by using 3 nodes. Or stick like this. So this can scale to as big of an amount as we can. Okay, that's the fun part. This can scale to a very large amount, and we can still execute ACID property like SQL query. So whenever we are using SQL, we have these properties which are always maintained: atomic, consistent, isolated, and durable. This is what it means to be transactional. The atomic part is very important here. Cloud Spanner, even though it is horizontally scalable, even though it works by having group of machines, because it is having group of machines, it can actually scale to any number of data or any number of demand which is required. But despite working having group of machines, it is still ACID. So banks would love that. Not just would, banks do love this product. It's a bit expensive product, but it is a useful product. So the evolution of our SQL paradigm, and this is where it has reached. And I'm just excited to see how further it gets evolved. Okay, so that's the kind of like me talking and talking about evolution. As the reason I'm using evolution is I was just reading a book on evolution. So this is just sitting here. The book on evolution. So that's why I just thought of using that example. Anyways, so then we have another product, Cloud Data Store. So the Cloud Data Store is like Spanner. It is horizontally scalable. Oops. It is horizontally scalable NoSQL database, right? It is fully managed, okay, and it also supports ACID transactions. Okay, but it is not a SQL database. You see, if you want to show the very important hint to show that it is not SQL, is the word which is no. This is a NoSQL database. Okay, it is horizontally scalable, it has transaction, but we can't kind of like access it like a SQL thing. So this is very interesting. Okay, this can automatically grow up and down. The automatic growth is fun part of data store. Data store now has upgraded to V2. That V2 has more features and it's cool. So if you are creating an application which you expect to grow very big, okay, the recommended product is data store. Okay, so here we can kind of like compare the products we have had in one slide. Okay, so cloud data store is kind of like generally known as a document DB. Let me change it to my pen. Okay, Bigtable is a NoSQL database, and kind of like I think more important part is like checking this thing, which is not capacity, but checking. Next slide. Yes. Okay, this slide is better, wherein we can actually understand which one is better based on the use case. Okay, so Bigtable by use cases, Bigtable is more like analytical data. Okay, whereas cloud data store is more like key value pair of data. For A value is B, for B value is C, stuff like this. It's kind of like structured, but it's not like Bigtable, which is like huge volume of data, but used for analytics. So you see, cloud data store is in terabytes, Bigtable is in petabytes, cloud storage in petabyte. SQL has a limitation of TB, but it's rare that it can actually grow to that level, because when you have more queries, that doesn't really happen. Cloud Spanner is this thing, which is again in petabytes. So Cloud Spanner is good. And we have another kind of like data, not really database, we could call it. We have a data warehouse. Okay. Whenever we say database, it's like it is known generally as OLTP. Okay. So then we have another type which is used more for analytics. Okay, even though Bigtable is used for analytics, but it's not only for analytics. It is actually a database. Whereas BigQuery, it's a data warehouse created only specifically for OLAP. Okay, BigQuery is so amazing. BigQuery is so amazing that it can process data of maybe 400 or 500 GB in 1 second. In 1 second. Okay. So in 2 seconds, it might be able to process TB of data, and you can imagine being able to process terabytes worth of data in such a short amount of time. How amazing that is, right? So that kind of like concludes our overview of cloud storage products. So in no way we have covered them in a comprehensive manner. Of course, this takes in a much longer training, which is like 4 or 5 days of training, where we still don't go into complete depth, because knowledge is not like a crash course wherein you simply do it for a day and you know everything of one thing. We are incrementally increasing our knowledge of this thing. Okay, so the first section is done. Now the next section is applications, which are going to be using the cloud storage which we have had before. Okay, but we will be focusing more on the applications. Okay, so let's check the applications. And I'm sure you might not know these things, but it's fine. That's why I'm here for. Okay, so let's start App Engine. So App Engine is a very cool product which we can use to build an applications. Okay, so the application which we can build, it is this thing called as platform as a service. Okay, so platform as a service is amazing. It's kind of like this. I could simply focus on my code. Okay, and I don't have to worry about platform at all. That's what this platform as a service means. I simply focus on my code, and whatever it needs to execute that code in a scalable manner to whatever thing it has to do, okay, App Engine will figure it out. Okay, so the amount of time you have to worry about the infrastructure, optimization, utilization, logging, monitoring, whatever things generally we have to do on cloud, none of that is needed here. So App Engine kind of like is developers, let's say, favorite. Sure, it kind of like has a bit limitations on libraries we could have, but once we sort all of these out, App Engine is kind of like amazing. Okay, so in App Engine, we actually have two things. We have App Engine Standard and we have App Engine Flexible. So we have App Engine Standard and we have App Engine Flexible. Okay. So in Standard, it's like the minimalistic version of App Engine. Okay. So if you have seen movie Spider-Man, okay, in Spider-Man, almost all the origin stories of Spider-Man, they talk about this dialogue, which is with great responsibility comes great, no, with great power comes great responsibility. So Uncle Ben and blah, 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 right? We have that thing. Okay. So you see, the great power is not just without any, let's say, consequences. Okay. If let's say we have been given a great powerful, let's say, product, it might be that it comes at a cost. So it's the same thing here in Standard. It's very scalable. It is very powerful. Okay. But the sacrifice we might have to make is it is not as flexible as the Flexible App Engine. Okay. That's why the name. We have App Engine Standard. It's like, it supports a few languages. Sorry. It supports a few languages. It can't write to local system. All the requests must time out in 60 seconds. Third-party libraries are not allowed. Only these languages are supported. All this kind of like limitation. But as long as these limitations are followed, that's it. As long as these limitations are followed, we actually have a extremely fast place to execute my applications. Okay. That's the kind of like thing. In the background, it tries to figure out everything. Okay. If it needs 500 machines, 5,000 machines, 50,000 machines, or 5 million machines, it's gonna still be fine. It's not gonna matter at all to App Engine. Okay. So this is App Engine Standard. Then we have App Engine Flexible. Okay. So App Engine Flexible is, you might not know, but there is this evolution which is happening, which is in Kubernetes. Back in 2014, when Docker started becoming very popular, that kind of like took the whole DevOps world by storm. Okay, SRE was extremely one of the hardest job because it was in terms of maintaining the site responsible to run my application. Okay, so the DevOps job was a headache. Okay, I have done a QA job myself, and in that, maintaining the environments, the libraries, the maintenance, the debugging, it's pretty complex. Okay, Docker made all that easy. Okay, Docker was a life-saving boon. And then after Docker came manager of Docker. Okay, so Docker creates nothing but a container. Okay, Docker creates nothing but a container. And now what we want is like, if we want to have an application which contain lots of containers, okay, and I want to manage together them with help of some library. That library is Kubernetes. So Kubernetes is nothing but an orchestration system for containers. Okay, so App Engine Flexible kind of like uses those containers. So container is a kind of like a very big part of this. It is pretty cool. Okay, and it's more powerful. Okay, it's more flexible than App Engine Standard, but the sacrifice is it is not as fast. Okay, so as you can see here, the startup of Standard is in milliseconds, whereas Flexible takes few minutes. So if I am deploying a upgraded version, it could be in milliseconds. Milliseconds is fast, right? Milliseconds, even a simple Python program takes this much time to compile. Whereas on App Engine, your website or any application you have deployed, it becomes available globally all over the world in less than millisecond. That's insane. Okay, so sure, we don't have any kind of like features like this. We can't do disk IO, we can't do third-party libraries and stuff like this, but it's fine. That's why we have data store. So data store pairs pretty well with App Engine Standard. But if you want, okay, no, I want other languages, I want to install other libraries, I want to do some bit of disk IO, then we can use flexible environment. So we just pick and choose what's our poison. So we pick what trade-off or constraint we can live with, and we simply choose that. Okay, so that's it. Now this was kind of like just one thing. We have more applications in execution platform now. We have Cloud Run, we have Kubernetes. So we have around these 5-ish products. If you want to see them, you can see them in Cloud Console. So I open my navigation menu. If I simply scroll down here, I will see, okay, my mouse is working now. So I would see these are the 5 applications. So App Engine has 2. Then we have Compute Engine. Then we have Kubernetes Engine. Then we have Cloud Run. And there is cloud functions, which is a kind of like a very minimalistic event driven lambda execution kind of like a product. It's pretty fun. Okay, it's very simple. So we have, these kinds of 5-6 types of compute options. So now let's just say we created an application. It could be anything. It could be an application to create even an Instagram filter. Okay, once we create an application, what we want to do is we want to make it accessible to the whole world, so that world can start using it, right? That's our aim. My application should be usable to the world. So for that purpose, we will use cloud endpoint. Okay, so cloud endpoints, let's say I created a filter, Instagram filter. Okay, Instagram filters are not, maybe something else. Okay, let's say we create that. There are so many ads I get for Instagram about different applications which do photo editing, right? So these apps take in our photo as an input and give processed photo as output. And the thing which it takes in that is the API. So, when I expose the API to public, it could be consumed by the people, right? So I can use cloud endpoint to create and maintain the APIs. It could be that I create a version 0.1, then version 0.11, then version 0.2.0, then version 0.1.1.3, stuff like this. I want 50% of traffic to go here, and blah 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 blah. It's like a lot of complexity I could do. Alpha beta testing, I want to do such things. So for that we use cloud endpoints. And then we have another thing, which is Apigee. It's not enough to simply create an application. We want to profit out of it. We want to secure it, right? So for that purpose is this created specifically to secure and make money out of our APIs. That's our Apigee Edge. Okay, so this was the kind of like overview of application development. Okay, now the final part is, it's kind of like pretty simple, so it should be fine if we jump through it. So first step is developing the application, right? So developing the application involves coding. It has storage. This thing involves databases. So the DB part, they are here. Okay, now once I have developed, I want to actually run it. Okay, so run on, we could do it on App Engine, or we could use it on what was the after App Engine we had, Kubernetes engine, or we have Cloud Run. Okay, so whoever is going to take and build my code and actually put it on the place where it's going to run, that thing is called as deployment. Okay, kind of like deployment is like taking the code, building the code, then running it where it is supposed to run. So developing, deploying, and then finally monitoring the cloud. What kind of applications do we have in Google Cloud which allow us to do this? That is this section, only made up of 3 slides, by the way. Okay, extremely small. It simply talks about the features we have. Okay, so first thing, code. Where does the code live? Everybody knows one of the most commons is GitHub. Okay, so if you don't want to have your code on GitHub, we actually have a similar repository inside Google Cloud. So maybe the code I want to keep secret or something like this. So maybe I could be using cloud source repository. It's a completely managed thing for Git, but we can always use GitHub. Then we have other thing, which is cloud functions. So for cloud functions, cloud function is nothing but after something happens, something which is nothing but event, we want to do some action. That action need not be very complex. So for example, if let's say a warning sign kind of like comes, maybe okay, maybe let's say there is some warning sign of smoke detector or something, then we check if the gas is running or something, we close it. Simple event, and then action we took. Very small. Okay, so cloud function is that kind of like application inside Google Cloud which can do that. Now the reason cloud functions is part of this part is, once a code change is done, okay, once a code change is done, which is like here, what we want to do is like we want to automatically trigger this process which builds the code and puts it online. So that's why we have cloud functions, which is part of here. So cloud function is going to kind of like any change done, any file added, blah blah blah. It can start this process of compiling the code, deploying it somewhere, and that's how it can go. Okay, so if there is another product called as deployment manager, which is nothing but create the infrastructure. So this creates the infrastructure for code to run. So the deployment manager is kind of like it's going to take, so it's nothing but a small scale alternative to Chef, Ansible, things like this, Terraform, yes, things like this. It can kind of like create and manage the Salt, Chef, Puppet. There are lots of things here. So if you want to create and manage and the configuration of whatever infrastructure I've had, I could use deployment manager. Okay. Then we also have another thing, which is nothing but how do I monitor? The monitoring is done with Stackdriver, not just limited to Google Cloud. It can kind of like execute on other cloud providers as well. But for us, we just need to know these things. I can monitor my code, I can do my logging, I can do debugging, I can check the errors, I can check the trace, I can profile how my code is running. Okay, all of these things Stackdriver allows me to do. So again, simple, but all we are seeing is a big picture overview. So as long as we know that, you see, it's kind of like in Matrix. Okay, Morpheus, when he meets Neo, he tells Neo that I can only show you the door. You are the one who has to walk through it. That is my favorite dialogue of all time. Okay, that is because it is very resonant with any kind of like training which I attend. Of course, 4 or 5 years back, I was the one who was attending the training. Now I'm the one who is delivering the training. So I'm from the opposite side of person who is following the door to the person who is showing the door. But anyways, any training simply tells you what to do. It can tell you the resources to learn from. So we have given the overview and what you can do, how you can go ahead, what hands-on you can do. Is that what we have organized this session for? If you simply go to this website, okay, please try to go here. This will open a QuickLab account. Okay, so there on QuickLab, you simply have to open the lab and do one lab there. Once you do that, whichever lab this guy directs you to, once you kind of like start and end the lab, you will get 1 month free account on QuickLab. Okay, this one is great. Why? Because it actually gives you this opportunity to do lots of labs and learn everything by hands-on. Okay, learning by hands-on is must. Okay, so when you kind of like do this, that's when you are truly kind of like taking the knowledge you have into the ability to build something with that knowledge. Okay, so let's just check this baseline infrastructure. Maybe I will quickly check a lab and then we will take Q&A. Okay, so baseline infrastructure, I am going to go on now. I can simply move this to some places else. And the link which we have to follow is this bit.ly link. Okay, you will get that link in the chat. Don't worry about it. So for now, let's see bit.ly. Then we have 2SEA small a capital UM. I miss Google URL shortener. Okay, so you see, when you create this website, when you go here, create account here, it's like this is a part of DevJam, Cloud DevJams. So it's like when you create a quest, you actually get few points, and when you complete all the labs and quests which we are giving as a part of this entire webinar series, at the end you would have accumulated a certain number of points, and based on that points you will get a badge and some details which we'll share soon enough. Okay, so learning is kind of like we are giving you incentive to learn. Learning should be its own reward, but let it be. Most people learn for money, so so that's fine. So this knowledge will help us in our job which we do. That is great. Okay, so let's check. Let me scroll down and see which of the lab I might want to do. So cloud storage we saw. Let me just open this cloud storage or maybe cloud console. Okay, this is this. Okay, this one is a bit big. So let me just start with this lab. What do? We click on start lab. Then what do? We wait for this timer to start. And then we open incognito window. In incognito window, we type console.cloud.google.com. And on that console.cloud.google.com, we copy paste the username and password. I've done this so many times that I remember these steps kind of like in my sleep. Then we have to kind of like do this, accept. Confirm. So this gives us a Google Cloud environment with free billing taken care. Okay. So we kind of like do this, and then we can, simply go ahead and start executing. So we have the quick labs kind of like thing where we have lots of instructions. Do that, and this will be really great. Of course, before you can actually do it, you will have to select a project. Okay. So I'll select a project here, and the project is that QuickLab GCP thingy. Okay. So once my project is done, this is where I will execute the labs. If I go into my Evernote note which has been shared, it gives you this thing which is free tier of Google Cloud. So maybe you could create an account and which gives you $300 of free credit, and it has a free kind of like thing, 2 million requests per month free on Cloud Run, 1 GB of storage free on Firestore, blah blah blah. But you don't have to worry about being below this kind of like thing as long as you use Quick Labs. So use Quick Labs, the billing is taken care of. It is really fun, and you can learn as well. So you get this 1 month free credit to kind of like install anything you want. It's a really great thing to do. So I would really recommend you guys make a use of it. Okay.